Hi, everybody, and welcome to COVID Chats. My guest today is Neal Freyman. Neal is my former camp counselor and current neighbor in New York City. His role at Morning Brew as managing editor provided me with a fresh new vantage point to explore on how business and news has been disrupted during this pandemic. Now, without further ado, here is episode 10 of COVID Chats. Hello, Mr. Freyman. Great to be with you.
How are you?
I am excellent. Episode 10 of COVID Chats. Very exciting for me.
Wow.
I know. Something about 10, that round number. It's a big threshold. So I'm excited here.
Yeah, I mean it's way beyond an HBO miniseries at this point.
That's right. Yeah, well, the Jinx, most 6 episodes, most of those they
Right.
can't make it to 10.
We're verging on Sopranos territory here.
6 seasons in a movie. So it's of course great to have you here. We have a long relationship, as I mentioned in the intro. Camp counselor. I interned for the Brew one summer, which you are the managing editor there. I got some questions, of course, related to that.
Yes.
And then also, last angle, new neighbor. You, of course, a couple months ago moved down the street. And it's so interesting now, with these COVID chats, it's a great opportunity for me to talk to people through the internet. Who knew I would be talking to somebody who lives down the street? That's really
I know, down the street, but far away
far away.
these days. But no, it is. I love the neighborhood. It's been awesome to for you to show me around earlier. All the cool spots
Yeah.
that are now closed, unfortunately. But it's great to be up here.
Yeah, we're in a new borough called Zoom. Zoom, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Yeah. So I got a few questions for you. Most of them revolve around your role as, the managing editor of the Brew, because I think the news angle is an interesting one to talk about. Part of the ethos of this whole video series was sort of to be a reprieve from the news and to allow people to share their personal stories, how they've been affected, and to, create bonds through empathy and togetherness. Now, of course, we are friends regardless, but the overall global community, I think, could use it, and surely the internet could use it. Lord knows some of the toxic nature on there. So in terms of your news background, I'm curious, what is it like trying to get a break from the news cycle when your job is to cover it?
I have to say it doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Even, last night I played a couple board games and maybe got a little tipsy. Don't tell my mom. But that was honestly, I just try to take a break here and there. But the news is so overpowering. And at Morning Brew, our mission is to basically curate all of the news that's been happening and distill it into a 5-minute email every morning. At certain times over the past few years that I've been there, it's been kind of like, what are we going to talk about today? What's the most important thing? Kind of grasping at straws here. And now there's like a deluge of really important life-saving information. So, sort of full steam ahead on that. And then just in my personal life, trying to stay sane, couple hours here, couple hours there, getting my mind off of it. I've been cooking, exercising, things like that.
Right. Have you built up a little bit of a tolerance to the news almost? Because I know for a lot of people, and for me at least, like the news, especially around in this time, not pre-COVID as much, but still I think somewhat. But the news now is so stressful and is very taxing on the mental health. Do you feel like because you have such a background with it, it's a little bit less so, or is your tolerance higher? I'm just curious, how are you doing?
Yeah. It's not great, to be honest. It feels terrible. And I think just reading all of this stuff every day, it's definitely taxing on your mental health. Like it's hard to sleep sometimes, and just thinking about all of the things, and not only thinking about what's going on in the world, but thinking about how what stuff is important to deliver to readers. And
Right.
even just, the economy is tanking, and there's a lot of competition for eyeballs now and attention.
Mm-hmm.
So there's added pressure to deliver the really most important stuff every morning. So
Right.
that's, on top of like all of the macro stuff that's happening, it's just added pressure. I put pressure on myself to make sure that the product that we deliver is the best, and more eyes are watching than ever.
Right.
And the stakes are just so much higher than anything we've published in the past 2.5 years. So also, it was like the first time I've gone through this. A lot of reporters and news people went through 2008 during the financial crisis
Sure.
and have some sort of baseline. But now but this is my first time doing it, so it's a
Right.
little day by day kind of thing. But
Right.
comes in waves. Sometimes you'll be like, sometimes you'll see some optimistic data point and feel good, and other times you'll see a pessimistic data point and feel like shit. So it goes up and down.
Do you think that is it the data itself that's positive or negative, or is it more how it's being portrayed? Would you
I
say?
think it depends on, it could be a story on a hospital being overwhelmed. It could be a data point that shows that cases have only increased from here. So that kind of stuff. Or it could, and it works in the converse too. If you see a data point about, like, I saw a tweet about some guys like who works at a new San Francisco hospital, and he was saying that the curve is flattening there, and they don't anticipate being overwhelmed. So
Mm.
that gives you hope. Then
Wow.
the next scroll on Twitter, you see, them building field hospitals in Central Park, which they are right now,
Wow.
just down the road from us. So it's like a roller coaster,
Mm.
a really bad roller coaster,
Yeah.
a wooden roller
Not
coaster.
one. Not one I'd pay for. So yeah, you spoke about sort of your history. You haven't had to write about recession. What's it like? You were riding the bull for so long. Now we're getting torn apart by the bear. Um, how has that transition been? Of course, now there's more pressure, as you were saying, to really deliver the goods. There's more eyeballs. Was it harder back then when everything was sort of good, or was it easier back then and harder now? Is it the pressure that makes it harder, or is it the fact that it's so important what you're doing now? Not that what you were doing before wasn't important.
Yeah, no, but I read what we wrote about, a year and a half ago, and I just am sort of thinking to myself, this stuff is way more interesting and important than that. It's honestly, it's like a matter of life and death. But in terms of like the economic crisis aspect, it's all about balancing and filling out the audience, because we're known to be funny and lighthearted.
Right.
And at this point, 3 million people filed for unemployment last week, and it's going to be millions more this week. So probably a lot of people who are reading the newsletter, saw their jobs evaporate in the
Mm.
past 2 weeks. So it's a matter, and then you have maybe 80% of the other readership who this is not really affecting, besides that they're bored out of their minds at home.
Right.
So it's
Mm.
a matter of feeling out the tone and figuring out, and you can carve out different spaces in the news to be lighthearted and not and serious. So
Right.
at the top, you can be lighthearted, and then when you're actually reporting on something serious,
Yeah.
be somber. And then when you flip the story, you can be a little more lighthearted again. But it's just a matter of like feeling it out and making sure that you're really on top of the mood of the country. So
Mm.
tomorrow we're probably not going to crack a joke at the top, because just this weekend, sort of, I think the cases really increased. The U.S. is in the lead by a lot right now. Things are pretty bleak. So I'm not going to come up with like a one-liner joke at the top tomorrow,
Yeah. Probably a good idea.
unless you think it's a good one.
Unless yeah. Yeah, I'll get back to you about that. No, that is really interesting, though. It's like your audience has really been split into people who are more affected and people who are less affected. Um,
Yeah. And it's a
yeah,
matter of serving them both. So
right.
we started a daily planner at the bottom
Mm.
of the newsletter, which has nothing to do with business news, which we usually do, but we just figured that everyone's calendars had been completely wiped clean, like all of ours, and
Yeah.
people have literally nothing to do. So we decided to make a daily planner that's like, here's your workout, here's your evening activity, because don't have anything to do, and we divided it into screen and no screen.
Love it.
So if you want to watch something on a screen, here's like a TV recommendation or video game, no
Sure.
screen, board game, jigsaw puzzle, creative things to do just to keep you occupied. And then another aspect of what we've been doing has been like the inspirational, let's all help each other kind of thing, even though that's not really the typical news organization's role, but
Sure.
you know, we feel like we can occupy that space now. So
Yeah.
we highlight good things that readers are seeing in their communities. We're giving links to how you can help. And so that's just like another facet of our coverage.
That's, I mean, that last part, I mean, you guys you've built a great community. It's great that you're now facilitating a little bit in terms of the news for that. I mean, I think there's a real dearth of community these days, like real genuine community. I think that's why we see so many people seek out community with, like, class paths, they'll take a spin class here or something like that. But religion's on the decline and people are getting married later. It's like everyone is really, they're desperate for people to bond to. So I think it's great that you guys are dipping your toes in that pond over there.
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 million readers now, so I don't know how much one brew reader relates to the other brew reader, but the more we push it and like instill that sense of these people are like you in
Yeah,
some respects, and when readers email in, we'll put like names and places. I think that really helps to give
totally.
a sense that these are real people. So just another little hack to
Yeah,
try
I
to
mean,
create.
it's like a book club almost,
Yeah.
But yeah, but even though we don't meet in person, we're still with each other. So I'm curious, has there been any upside with this transition to working from home for you? Has there been any communication, collaboration, or coordination that you've seen gone up? Has any of the chaff been cut from the wheat, so to speak here?
Hmm. I don't think I haven't noticed anything truly distinct about our workplace right now. I think we operate pretty much on Slack, and
Mhm.
I run a writing team, and writers don't like to be next to each other when they're writing. So it's been fine. I think been sitting in the same place for a while is not great without seeing anybody, and
Yeah.
it was always great just to be able to look over at the next computer and talk to somebody about an idea you had. So um, we've been compensating with Zoom meetings, which are going fine, except they can get very awkward um, at times. But yeah, I haven't sensed anything truly better or worse. We're onboarding a new employee this week, so that is going to be a challenge, and an interesting challenge to make sure he feels a part of the team when he probably won't even see anybody for a month at least.
Right. Yeah, that's a wild process. Well, I'm surprised you said that there hasn't really been much downside either, because of course I've heard a lot of the downside, at least from
Yeah.
some of my friends in the educational system who I've spoken to on the show.
Mhm.
The no upside, I was fishing there, hoping maybe we'd get something, but I mean, I'm just glad it's been kind of an even transition for you, because I remember early on you talked about you guys did sort of a stress test, one day working from home to feel it out. You ever think
Right.
we were going to get to this, this point?
Yeah. Yeah. I knew as soon as we did that stress test the next day, we were not going back to work.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
I, I saw the writing on the wall there, and I should have brought my second monitor. That's one thing I do miss
Mm,
um, from the office.
right.
But
I know you're
I,
a big
I
blue
I'm
monitor
in
guy.
yeah, I love it. I'm in communication with everyone on our team, and I kind of enjoy the privacy of writing. We have an open office plan, which I really am not a fan of. I want a cubicle so bad, or some sort of office where you can just kind of shut people out
Right.
and focus on your work, because with these open office plans, like everyone's sitting at the same table, they can, everyone's eating, breathing on each other, and
Right. What's on
it's
your
just
screen?
yeah, it's just when you want to focus on something and everyone's bothering you too, like asking
Right.
questions. And when you
Right.
really want to focus on something, which a lot of writers want to do, it gets distracting, and when
Totally.
there's other people around. So this has been great.
have you found that maybe has your writing been a little more efficient because there's less sort of distractions, or is that taken up with other elements that have been reduced?
Yeah.
Right. So it's a give and
Yeah,
take.
maybe. Yeah, I guess people are always going to get distracted by things as long as
Yeah.
the browser is open. So
That's
whether
right.
it's a Slack message or refreshing Twitter, I've been just as distracted, just
Just
by different means.
Um, so I started a Twitter inspired by you, COVID chats clips. So we'll put even briefer
Oh,
clips, clip this
smart.
up. 'Cause I know you're a big Twitter hound. How
Oh,
do
yeah.
you think Twitter has played a role in this coronavirus pandemic as compared to both traditional media and then the brew? Is it just, has Twitter just been sourced? And we see these sort of tweet articles, or is Twitter actually more so the news than other sources because they're saying things first?
Well, I think it's probably not, you probably can't divorce Twitter from real news sources because a lot of times it's the reporters who are writing the longer form articles for NBC, New York Times, whatever, and they're just also posting the same information on Twitter.
Hmm.
So, and I follow some quote unquote amateur reporters, but for the most time, it's just a crossover. It's just a matter of how the information is delivered and the speed at which it's delivered. So I don't have to wait for the next day's New York Times to know about a particular status story that's coming out.
Hmm.
And I found it extremely valuable / addicting during this time. There's an insane amount of amazing information. It's been a great way to learn about things that I can share with readers. People are sourcing resources for kids, for parents who have kids at home,
Right.
just like, here's a thread, drop some ideas in this thread, and then the next thing you know, there's hundreds of amazing ideas and links. And so it's just kind of a gold mine that I've loved to tap.
Hmm.
It can get a lot, so I probably should do a little less of it because it's just taking up a lot of my life. But
Yeah.
it's been amazing, and it's also kind of doom and gloom. Well, like I was saying before, sometimes it's doom and gloom, sometimes it's good. It goes back and forth.
Do you think, I mean, I know the algorithm is driven by something, and from what I've read, it seems like negative headlines get more play, either views or clicks, or, people, especially in a time like this, like the more shocking, the more, I'm not gonna say pessimistic, but, just the more horrible it is, the more shocking, the more clicks. Do you feel that that creates not exactly an echo chamber, but just sort of a dangerous place to be facilitating and learning from if so much is bad? And now, of course, the environment right now, so much is bad, so maybe it's
Yeah.
just a reflection of that. But is your experience on there oftentimes a lot of negative things, or what's the split?
Yeah, I think what you were saying, it's hard to just, I think this is just maybe a tough situation to comment on that
Mm.
because there is a lot of bad stuff, but it should be a lot of bad stuff because 90% of this is really bad and maybe 10% is good. So I think, yeah, I think it accurately reflects the whatever's going on in the world, in my opinion,
The
from what I've
zeitgeist,
seen.
so to speak,
Mhm.
if I'm using that word correctly.
I just think it reflects, the general way things are going. I think there's 90% things are really awful and they're going to get a lot worse before they get better. And there's 10% is, here are some of the solutions that people are working on. But you see, insights into what doctors are going through and first person stories about all this. And that's a lot of the stuff you can't really find, not in the mainstream media, but like on legacy news sites without like diving in and reading the article.
Right, right. Yeah, it's true. That is true. The smaller stories have been amplified to a level where they can be on the same level, where everything's on the same level on Twitter. So,
Yeah, it's one person saying like, my brother just got this and here's what he's going through.
mm,
That is so valuable, so interesting and personal, and something you can't really see anywhere else.
mm. Yeah. So, if you had to give sort of maybe a top two. I won't make you do a top 10, even though it's the 10th episode. A top two sort of most inspiring or uplifting personal things maybe you found from this pandemic, not on either on Twitter or not on Twitter, and then maybe we can delve into the negative. But first, let's do the positive, if you got any off the top of the mind.
Positive. I've enjoyed seeing a lot. A lot of people are. It's interesting. People are just put into weird social situations right now, which
Mm,
is kind of super interesting how that's happening. People are inside. When you go to the grocery store, you have to stand 6 feet away from people, and grocery store clerks have to enforce this. It's just a weird time to interact with people.
mm,
So I love reading stories about that or thinking about that. And a lot, these balcony sing-alongs are
yeah,
kind of a funny thing.
I love them.
So I enjoyed seeing that content online, and I want to put together a balcony playlist of maybe the most popular songs that are, I think it's pretty like Stand By Me, that kind of stuff, which
Sure.
maybe John Bon Jovi on a prayer. It's basically all the karaoke songs, but I
Yeah, it's
think in
got
a
to
funny
be
way
ones
together.
everyone knows.
It's not gonna be one of your fish favorites.
Yeah, some deep cut from '96 or something.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's on the balcony best of playlist, but that's
Yeah.
been cool. And now at 7 p.m. every day, people, I don't know if you've heard, but people start clapping on our block and in
Oh yeah.
Manhattan for healthcare workers. So that's just so weird. And a month ago, the fact that people would be inside their homes clapping at a prearranged time in the day is just a bizarre thing that is happening now, and we just accept it. And it will be interesting to see how these things just keep going. I think we're going to be doing this for at least another month. So humans are so adaptable, and it will be interesting to be like, this is our life now. And maybe sitting at a restaurant is just super weird because everyone's putting germs everywhere. Like, why did we ever do that?
Yeah, what do you think lasting going forward? Like, are we going to have a generation of germaphobes? Something interesting that a guest who I spoke to earlier today spoke about was she was a preschool teacher, and she was like, these preschool students are missing out on such a key period of socializing that really developmentally
Uh,
will have a big role later on. Of course, we're both fully formed humans, but how do you see this impact and some of these social changes going on as we move forward, hopefully past this, as you say, in like a month or so,
yeah.
or will we just adapt back? And as my mother said, after Yom Kippur, everyone starts gossiping again. I think I just lost you for a
Mhm.
second. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I got the gist of the question.
Yeah.
I it's hard to say, and I'm gonna be wrong. I've like avoided predicting. It's something I've also thought about, and I've avoided predicting anything because
Mm,
I'm just gonna be very, very wrong. One thing I do think is we will be more like conscious of germs. I like when I pull the door open now, I use my pinky and I just kind of see it everywhere. And the thought of being on a subway and like wrapping your hand around the pole seems like a very foreign thought. And maybe we'll get over that. Maybe we won't get over that. Maybe there will be Purell stations in literally every single place we go into. And
mm,
maybe what they're doing now in China as it starts to get going again is taking everyone's temperature as they go into restaurants or literally anywhere in public. So I can totally see that happening here. You have to, if you have a fever, you can't go into certain places, and there's just like more widespread testing.
mm,
um, I think as far as like the Zoom revolution, you probably will see more physical meetings replaced by Zoom. Why would I hop on a half-hour subway ride to go to Midtown
right.
when I think people will be way more comfortable using Zoom, using video conferencing software to replace those physical meetings, and it won't be completely eliminated, but you'd have to think that over the span of a month and a half of building a certain habit of video chatting and people getting comfortable with that technology, you have to think it's gonna permeate a little more of mainstream business life.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll stop going to bars at all. Like, I don't think any of that will stop. I think, like
Yeah.
what your mom said, a lot of it will snap back
Yeah.
to the way we were, but you will see signs of the fact that this happened.
Mm. Yeah, the bar. I mean, once someone has a beer in them, they don't really care about the germs as much.
Right, but yeah, yeah, and I don't know how, like, beer pong,
Yeah.
sharing that water cup. We used to just laugh how disgusting it is, but then
I know.
now we want to, Purell after every shot.
I saw some memes about that. College students like tagging a gross, dirty basement, being like, "If you played beer pong here, you're immune from the coronavirus."
It's probably true.
I mean,
I
it's
don't know.
probably
I
not.
don't know what Ape High basement was like at Rutgers, but I've seen
Nice.
some. I've seen some basements,
Yeah,
and
to finish basement.
yes, you'd think these people would be immune to pretty much every disease.
Yeah, the germaphobe thing, right? Everyone will definitely, I think, be a little more cautious. We'll see if that maintains. Ridership might be down. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't know about permanently, but I mean, also like shared cars are very, uh, you know, ger- uh, just they have a lot of germs as well. Ubers and Lyfts, and it's not like those are cleaner. We just have I mean, there's less people certainly, but
I
uh,
wonder about handshakes too. I mean,
I think
doesn't
that,
shaking a
yeah,
person's hand right now seem like the craziest thing? So the problem is shaking a hand is the least awkward way to greet somebody. So we may just revert back to that for sheer avoidance of awkward interactions, like a weird head nod or something like that.
yeah.
That's just so cringy. I can't imagine us like defaulting to that over the long term.
A little side eye.
There's no
Yeah,
good way.
I
There's no
think the
good way.
bump. I think the bump is really gonna
The
be
bump.
the new handshake because the bump is still personal enough. The elbow bump is too. It's a little too
Is
weird. I think.
Yeah, I don't think that'll catch on, but the bump might be good,
I
which
think
is
the bump
which is
might take over. Rounding out here on some non-news notes. What has this been like personally, being quarantined in an apartment with your brother and your longtime roommate? Of course, you have a lot of love for both of them, but yeah, personally, walk me through what that's been like, and keeping in touch with the parents and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with my parents. Like, I think they're pretty bored. They're pretty they're busybodies that always went out to events and got together in the community, and I think all of that is gone, and so they're doing fine. I mean, adapting to life like adapting a virtual life is very different for people in their 60s than it is for us, so it's been interesting uh seeing them learn Zoom, and now I think they're way more comfortable with it. I was in I went to services with my parents on Zoom after them badgering me on Saturday morning.
I love that.
So it was funny because I think everyone there was like over 80, and they all knew how to work this thing, and so it's incredible to
Yeah.
see how we adapt, and it's been amazing seeing the communities that have come together over virtual life. But personally, it's all, and so they just call me a lot and just kind of hang out on the phone, and I'm like, I kind of got things to do. They're
Yeah.
busy though.
Right.
um,
Good.
I mean, work has been keeping me busy, which is good. I've been cooking a little bit more. My brother and my roommate play a lot of FIFA, and so just kind of playing FIFA, and I guess they do like a decent amount of work over the course of the day, but they also like to play video games, and I'm just sitting
Sure.
there working, and they're like screaming at the TV. But luckily, I get along with them, and we watch a show or two at night, play some
Right.
piano, drink a few glasses of wine. It's a good time, and we we'll get through it as however long this lasts.
And to close, how do you think you'll look back on this? On these, however long it is, this period of our lives.
I think we will, I think it'll be like any other major disaster, traumatic event. After 9/11 happened, the first year was like shock, I think and then it slowly gave way to action and slowly gave way to what it is now, which is, a date that we all remember maybe 2 minutes of and use it as a historical marker. And I see this doing the same thing. There's the immediacy will wear off. We'll all be going about our daily business again. And hopefully, I trust our public health system they say the virus will come back, and hopefully we have to build up, vaccines and ways to treat it and make sure it doesn't flare up to this extent again. But I'm confident we can get there. So I think it'll be like any super traumatic event. We're going through it now. This is what it feels like to be going through history, or living a part of history, and we'll slowly decide that it's not, a big factor in our lives anymore, and we'll start worrying about climate change, and we'll start worrying about sports again, and they will play the sports again, hopefully. And we'll just start worrying about that and our fantasy teams, and I look forward to when that day's come.
A return to normal. Yeah, I think it's interesting to juxtapose it with 9/11, or to compare it to 9/11, should I say, just because, 9/11, of course, the severity and the shock, I think, were greater, but it happened so quickly. It was in such a short period of time. Of course, the aftermath was a long time, but this has already been a long time, and it's going to be even longer. I feel like the hangover or whatever truly comes out of this might actually be a little more lasting, or a little more permanent. But that, whatever that is, who's to say at this point? But it will be interesting, because it's been, how long has it been so far? The days blend together. We've been quarantined for 2 weeks. How long have you been working from home? 3 weeks?
Yeah, over 2.5 weeks. Yeah,
2.5 weeks. Unbelievable.
Down the street. Blend together, and you pack up your briefcase, head up from your bedroom down to the living room.
Yeah, that's right. Stop by the Dunkin' Donuts in the kitchen.
What a commute.
What a commute.
Hi to your coworkers.
Okay. Well, Neal, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Number 10.
Excellent episode as per. I will hopefully see you soon, buddy.
Yeah, man. Stay healthy.
You too, bud.